defected to Malta, saying they flew there after refusing orders to bomb the protesters. The opposition now fully controls Libya's second-largest city, Benghazi, after seizing it over the weekend. We go now to Washington, D.C., to Abdullah Darat. He's a Libyan-American activist and co-founder of the website EnoughGaddafi.com. Welcome to Democracy Now! What do you understand is happening? It's very hard to get information out. Often the video we see is from people's cell phones posting them online. Abdullah, what do you know so far?
Well, what we can tell at the moment is that the regime is in the kind of throes of desperation on its way out. But what we don't know is how many people it's planning to take down with it along the way. Unfortunately, over the last couple days, the violence has actually intensified in Tripoli as the regime attempts to use irrational violence with sporadic gunfire, gunships from helicopters, and other forms of terrorism to keep people off the streets. They recognize that if the population of Tripoli gets out into the streets and en masse collects in some of its central squares, that Tripoli will fall and the regime will be done. So what they have attempted to do, is to scare people and to make sure that they do not leave their homes by intensifying the amount of mercenaries that are on the streets, by shooting almost at random throughout the neighborhoods in Tripoli, and also by spreading all types of misinformation. As you mentioned, Amy, at the moment it's very difficult to confirm reports of anything on the ground. All we can really rely on at the moment are eyewitness accounts. However, we saw even on Al Jazeera yesterday what appeared to be the regime calling into Al Jazeera channels and spreading misinformation about the use of bombs from aircraft in attempts to, what I believe, scare the population and deter them from entering the streets and really taking Tripoli, which, for the most part, as you mentioned, is really the regime's last stronghold.
Abdullah Darat, the information that mercenaries are being used, meaning that they have to supplement forces at home because they're not willing to fire on fellow Libyans, is this correct?
That appears to be the case.
And what about the human rights? Go ahead.
I mean, it appears to be the case that the mercenaries have been brought in as additional force. There are also a number of security battalions and other army forces that are also fighting with them. The army is not innocent of the violence, although there are certain interests and certain factions within the army that have laid down their arms. We still do see a number of people within the army, within the security forces, who are also joining the fighting. The mercenaries seem to be an attempt really to, as I mentioned before, terrorize the population, as the regime really understands that what it comes down to is that these people who are entering the streets see the safety in numbers, understand that if they come out en masse, the regime will be toppled.
War crimes are being committed. What about the Human Rights Watch report?
Well, the Human Rights Watch report, and they've issued several over the last couple of days, and will probably continue to issue more. We've seen as you mentioned, Amy, the use of mercenaries, and the mercenaries have been, for all intents and purposes, snipers for the most part. They've been positioned on top of roof buildings and have been systematically picking off protesters one at a time. A lot of the images and videos that we're seeing that are slowly trickling out of the country, as you know, that the internet service is slow and inconsistent. So we're not getting all of these images all at once. But what we are seeing is that those who have died in the recent violence have died often from gunshot wounds to the head, to the eye, to the ear. It's sharpshooting. Another kind of confirmed set of war crimes is that they've been using anti-aircraft weapons to shoot protesters. 50 caliber machine guns. There's a video that recently came out that shows the shells from this. We're also hearing reports, also confirmed by eyewitnesses, that security forces are going into hospitals and killing doctors and healthcare workers so that they do not care for the injured. The violence is gruesome and staggering, and really justifies to the eyes of the international community why this regime must be stopped, and why it must end. It really shows what over the last 40 years has become a country dominated by the megalomania of this one human being, who cares more for himself and his power than he cares for anybody in Libya. He has an utter disrespect and complete, almost, it's almost as if he despises the population, and that's been apparent in his utter disregard for their lives, their safety, their interests.
What about what the U.S. And U.S. contractors can do? The news that General Dynamics signed a $165 million contract to arm the Libyan Armed Forces Elite 2nd Brigade 2 years ago, Halliburton, Shell, Raytheon, Dow Chemical. Do you think President Obama is doing enough?
Well, it took them a few days, I think, to finally make a statement yesterday, and unfortunately, I think that they were possibly waiting to see if the regime could actually quell the uprising or not, in the same type of opportunism that we saw in Egypt and Tunisia, where the State Department and the White House appeared to only jump on the side of the protesters when they realized that the regime is on its way out. I think that's completely unfortunate. And beyond that, in Libya, what we have seen is almost an utter disregard for human life. This isn't just a question of political interest, but people's humanity. These are war crimes that are being committed, and the Obama administration must do more than just condemn the actions. They must rally the international community to intervene in other ways, to intervene possibly with peacekeepers, to allow medical equipment into the country, to perhaps create a no-fly zone over Libya, so that more mercenary aircraft and other warships do not enter Libyan airspace. I mean, there's a number of things that the world international community must do immediately in order to ensure.
Abdullah Durat, as we wrap up, your own website that I mentioned, Enough Gaddafi, that you established 2 years ago to take on the brutality of the Gaddafi regime, was hacked 2 days ago by the government, by the Libyan government, so it's empty now?
Yes. Yes, it is. The website is currently down, but we hope we can get it up soon. I mean, we were only one victim amongst many who have been victimized online through Facebook or through their own websites over the last couple of days, as the regime really tries to black out any information. I mean, they've really tried to seal off the whole country and systematically destroy the population while nobody watches. And I think finally word is getting out. People are learning of the atrocities inside the country, and I hope that the senselessness of the violence will compel people to act against this regime and finally bring it down. Abdullah
Durat, I want to thank you for being with us. Libyan-American activist, one of the co-founders of EnoughGaddafi.com, speaking to us from Washington, D.C. Al Jazeera reporting what we are witnessing today is unimaginable. Warplanes and helicopters are indiscriminately bombing one area after another. There are many, many dead. Though Mohammed Salah said in a live broadcast, anyone who moves, even if they are in their car, they will hit you. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. From the Middle East to the Midwest. When we come back, we go to Ohio and Madison, Wisconsin, where mass protests continue. Stay with us. Rabia Abu Khalil here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As we move from the Middle East to the Midwest, for more than a week now, Wisconsin's been the focal point in a national fight to protect workers' rights. Republican Governor Scott Walker sparked an uproar after announcing plans to cut pay and eliminate collective bargaining rights for public employees. The unions have agreed to accept all Walker's proposed cuts, which would see them pay 12% of their health benefits, half their pension costs, but the unions have refused to relinquish their right to collective bargaining. As the standoff continues in Wisconsin, the struggle is intensifying in other states. On Monday, Iowa's Republican Governor Terry Branstad called for a measure that would bar public workers from negotiating their health benefits. In Indiana, Republicans have proposed a bill to remove union membership as a condition of employment. Meanwhile, in Ohio, tens of thousands are expected to pour into the state capital of Columbus today for a rally against Senate Bill 5. The measure would require state employees to abandon collective bargaining, pay more toward health insurance premiums, and switch to a so-called merit-based pay system. Republican Governor of Ohio, John Kasich, has said public employees who go on strike should lose their jobs.
If they want to strike, they should be fired under this, you should not allow, look, you can have a change in the law that says, and again, these decisions are not finally made, but, there are ways to say that you're not going to strike, and we're going to continue negotiations without a binding arbitrator.
And just to make sure I'm clear, you do not think police and fire emergency services should have the right to strike?
I really don't favor the right to strike of any public employee, okay? That's my personal philosophy. How practical that is to implement, but my personal philosophy is I don't like public employees striking, okay? They got good jobs, they got high pay, they got good benefits, a great retirement. What are they striking for?
That was Republican Governor of Ohio, John Kasich. For more on the struggle from Ohio to Wisconsin, we're going to start in Wisconsin because the Reverend Jesse Jackson is walking with a group of students into school, their first day back to school in, more than a week. He is part of this rally to reopen the Wisconsin schools. Reverend Jackson, welcome to Democracy Now! I know you're headed to Ohio, where we're going to go next, but talk about the scene right now where you are in Madison.
Good morning.
It's good to have you with us.
Well, it is an awesome scene here where workers are fighting for basic economic justice, and yet they go back to school today because there's no conflict between children pursuing an education and teachers having job security at the same time. I recall in the 60s we will be marching and studying, sometime taking our books to the jail cells. And so teachers are going back to school today, but the struggle here for workers' rights for collective bargaining will not stop. Why would their quest to have educational equity for all of the children?
Reverend Jackson, we were just playing a clip of actually the Ohio Governor, John Kasich. You're headed to Ohio next. But talk about Madison as ground zero for this worker rebellion, citizen rebellion in Wisconsin.
What is significant here is that it's no longer about workers making economic concessions. It's about the government wants to deny workers the right to collective bargaining. He wants to move to a real states' rights ideological posture. And workers should not give up their basic right to collective bargaining. Dr. King's last act on earth, marching in Memphis, Tennessee, was about workers' rights to collective bargain, their rights to dues checkoff. You cannot remove the roof for the wealthy and remove the floor for the poor. And that's what's happening with the Glass-Steagall Act, removing the roof for the bankers and making corporations be a person, remove the roof for the rich, and then crush the floor for working people. And that's not right. And workers should not be the scapegoats to this economic collapse. Workers are not the reason why we had the home foreclosure crisis with greedy banks and lack of oversight. It's not workers' fault that we misinvested into Iraq and Afghanistan for $1 trillion or $1 trillion tax